Okay, well, hello again, and here we are for a third one today. And today we have with us Jessica Kazaniwskyj. Hello, Jessica.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, Tammy. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. So Jessica is a holistic empowerment coach, and she specializes in childhood trauma. And I'm pretty sure she has a story behind why she specializes in childhood trauma. So we're going to let her tell her story.
Oh, all right. Very good. Yes, of course, I have a reason. I lived it for my entire life. And then it transferred into my young adulthood. It started. My parents were. I was the product of a teenage pregnancy. They got married young. My mom is a full-blown narcissist who also has been diagnosed bipolar. Although I'm sure many of your listeners can agree that as soon as she was diagnosed, that shrink didn't know what he was talking about, and we moved on to another shrink. My father is an alcoholic and extremely emotionally immature. They divorced, and he wound up getting his mistress pregnant, which is why they divorced. And I was bopped between both houses. I was physically abused, emotionally abused, spiritually abused by both of them. And when I was 15, I had been living with my dad for what my stepmother had determined was a too long amount of time. And to get rid of me, she decided to convince my father that I was a danger to her and the household. And I was admitted, which I fought out of the institution with the help of the mental advocacy in Illinois. And when I was released, I realized I was at the end of my rope and I needed to get out and I had to get my power back. So I went on a journey, and a friend of mine discovered that actors and actresses get custody of themselves so they can work, longer hours under the age of 18. And she's like, you got to try this. And so I called the state's attorney. I called multiple attorneys, and I found one who finally took my case pro bono. And she was my angel at the time, and served both my parents. And when I got to court, I was 16 years old, and the judge, neither one of them showed up. So the judge said, everything you've said, in my written statement, he goes, I believe, because neither parent was there, even though they were served. So I went on my healing journey after that. I was on my own, renting an apartment. I had a mattress on the floor and garage sale pots and pans and whatever I could, scrimp together, and got married very young and to a narcissist and an alcoholic. He was a combo package.
How you put that?
I figured why not? And that's when as I started healing, though, I started realizing that, we repeat those patterns. And so I subconsciously drew my parents back to me because I hadn't healed those relationships. We're now divorced. I had gotten a degree in psychology. I've become trauma informed certified. And I have done everything from the somatic healing to astrology work to, obviously Bible work. And I mean, you name it, I have done it. And so I know what works and what doesn't. And I'm happily married and coaching and realizing that was my life's purpose, having gone through all that pain. So.
Okay, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that your dad and your stepmother had you thrown in a mental institution.
I came home from school one day, and apparently she had been working on him behind the scenes for probably a couple of weeks at that point in time. And he literally told me, we're going to go for a ride. Like, you tell your dog when you're taking him to the vet. And we went, and I sensed that something was wrong, as I didn't know where we were going. And we pulled into this building, and he brought me in there. He said, we're just going to talk. And I didn't leave. And I was in the room with a girl who cut herself. And I was so afraid she was going to cut me. You know what I mean? So I didn't sleep. I was sticking pills under my tongue that they wanted me to take and spitting them out in the toilet. I mean, I was full blown movie mode. Seriously, they could have made a movie that week. But every person that I encountered knew I wasn't supposed to be there. But my dad had really good insurance. He had PPO, and he had a doctor that didn't give a crap and said, okay, we'll put her in, and get her out of your hair kind of thing. But I fought because they perform, I don't know if you know this, but they perform, they're required to perform certain tests on you, like neurological and psychological. And I passed with flying colors on all of them. So when the advocate said, I need proof, they couldn't provide it. And they dragged their feet for as long as humanly possible. I was in there almost a week, and it was the longest week of my life. And he had also gotten emergency custody from my mother behind her back, and she didn't know. So he had the legality to put me in there. This was all done. Yeah. I was
threw you in a mental institution with every intention of when you got out, he was going to take care of you.
I really don't know if he thought that far. Knowing him the way I do, I don't think he thought that far. I think he just thought in the now, because he's so emotionally immature. He really is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go through a similar, I'm not going to try to say I went through a similar situation, but my father had gotten remarried, and the stepmother, whatever reason, I wasn't being a good kid at that time. I was definitely a little out of control, and I look back now and say I probably deserved it, but they actually sent me to go live with my mother, who was the abusive, narcissistic, crazy, off her rocker, just not the person I needed to be with. So whatever reason they thought that was a great idea, I don't know. Because it was literally the worst 6 months of my entire life. So, but you wonder. And then I remember I had lost like 20 pounds. I was like 85 pounds when I came home, and I finally hit a wall and said, I can't do this anymore. Packed my suitcase. I came back to my dad, and I was like, okay, either take me or leave me, whatever, but I'm not going to do that, so that's, I guess, the point at which you were at, because you were like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going back to him.
Yeah. Oh, no way. No, I couldn't. I mean, I was still in my 30s, and he came to tell me my great grandmother had died, and he was in his car, and I wouldn't close the door to his car. I was sitting on the pad, because I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and if you would have asked me going out to the car, were you afraid? I would have said, of course not. I'm a grown woman. I can. But when I got in, it was visceral, and I was terrified that he was going to kidnap me again, because that's what I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. You hit a point where you're just like, and people who don't have narcissistic parents, they don't understand. It's really Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, you don't know who it is from day, or what's going to set them off. Like,
you're just walking on eggshells. I think we had this conversation the other day where I, sitting there laughing and joking with my brother and his friends and everything. And the next thing you know, my mom's pouring a pot of boiling water down my brother's back for zero reason. It's just crazy, and you're just, I don't understand. But yet then the next morning it could be, hey, sweetie, how you doing? You're like, what?
Yeah. And you start to feel like you're the crazy one, which I guess is their goal. But yeah, you start to question your sanity. You're like, am I the crazy one? Because you're right. They act the next morning like, what are you talking about? Nothing happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And especially as a young child. So having the alcoholic parents, you said both of them were, or just your?
No, just my dad.
Just your dad was.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any memories of that, like, blackout where he did something or said something and then denied it in the morning?
Well, he was an awake blackout, which was something that I inherited, which I did not know until I was in my 20s and was drinking a little heavy. He would have full-blown conversations, events, be driving with me in the passenger seat. No recollection the next day, thinking I made it all up. And I experienced it twice in my entire life personally. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm never, because it's scary when you're told a whole evening goes by and you have no recollection and you were having full conversations with someone. You're like, no, I that was the red flag for me. But apparently he's an awake blackout person. So he'd talk to you like nothing. Next morning, I never met you. That's what he would say. And both are true. I don't know how else to put that. Yeah. But both are true. He wasn't lying.
No, that's the truth. Yeah. Because I have memories, like, even, and I remember really, really young, just, being 5 or 6. And that was when my mom started that. I hate you. I wish you were never born. And I remember I didn't have a lot of boundaries. I didn't have a lot of rules, but we didn't lie, or at least we were told we didn't lie. So I would be like, why do you, I'd say to my dad, why does she say that? Why would she say that to me and then deny it?
Mhm.
And it was so hard. I wasn't really about I was probably 13 or 14 when I really understood the concept that she didn't know. Like she wasn't lying to me. My dad was like, she's not lying. She just drank too much and she doesn't remember.
Mhm.
I'm like, that's a weird concept for me as a young child to
Sure. Yeah.
understand.
Mhm.
Know how you can have a conversation and not know you said something. And I'm like, well, don't say that again, but you're little and you're confused. And I feel like, and especially like in your situation, I mean, the uncertainty and the walking on eggshells had to have been just horrific.
It is. It is. And you don't feel the whole reason that we don't feel safe as we become adults, and it's because there was no one in charge when we were kids. We were in charge, but not really, because you couldn't make the actual decisions, but yet no one else was taking care of you. You know what I mean? Like it was a weird tightrope to walk. Like you're way ahead of where you're supposed to be as a kid, but yet you're not actually making the decisions. But that's why you don't feel safe when you get older. You nothing feels safe to you.
No, and you're constantly waiting for the next shoe to drop, waiting for the next bad thing to happen. So, I'm better now. But when I was in
Yes.
my 20s, boy, if there was something coming up, and it could have been a night out, it could have been going to a friend's house, it could have been anything. I had probably 15 different scenarios of these horrific things that were going to happen that night. It never dawned on me that I was just going to a friend's house, hang out and have a good time. Like
Yeah.
that would have never crossed my mind. So you're like constantly like, oh, what's coming at me now? It's just
Yeah.
so crazy to live like that. And it's so bad on your physical health.
Oh yeah, because you're constantly pumping out cortisol. You're constantly stressed. You're at your adrenal glands are taxed. Because you don't ever come down. You're here all the time. You're here or you're sleeping, and that's that's it. If your eyes are open, you're here.
I actually said that all the way up into my 40s, and I had done a lot of like healing work and stuff like that. But even, you go from one addiction or one dopamine hit to the next. And I became very much in like probably 15 years ago, a very big workaholic, like where I was working all of the time. And it kept me busy. It kept me distracted. I was having a good time. I was getting everything done and I was feeling very productive. But every time I had more than 2 days off, I would get sick. And I was like, why is that? And they said, because your body is just letting down. It's finally, it's not running on adrenaline, and adrenaline will keep you going for a long time.
I can attest to that. Yes. Yes, it will. Yeah. Yeah. I got my adrenal glands checked one time they ran a blood panel for an entirely unrelated thing. And she comes back in and she's like, I don't know how you function. She goes, your adrenal glands are shot. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, all right, I don't know, but you're right. Adrenaline will keep you going for a very long time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you
But
just
it's like
crash
constantly
daily.
being on speed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a downer when you come down. Like when you come down and you don't have that adrenaline anymore, it's almost more exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
It's like double exhausting.
The people who once they start that process, they sleep. Like I think a lot of people think like they're like clinically depressed because they're your body's just finally able to rest.
Yep.
And it's some people. I know for me, it was almost a year of that, of like where I was just tired all the time, napping, just exhausted, and it was just because my poor little body had finally gone, oh, thank God, she's finally resting. And it's people think that there's something wrong with it. And there's not. That's a pivotal point of the process is resting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember that point because I remember I was just exhausted, and it's like my brain was going, but my body was like, no, Tammy, thank God you finally slowing down. I mean, it was a good and exhausting, but yet I knew it was a good thing. I knew.
Right.
People around me didn't, I don't think knew. Like I was just like, didn't know, I lethargic and just just pure, no energy. It was it was a long while. But so tell me so I know when you hit that moment was when you moved out. Tell me about your healing journey. So you said you've done everything. So what are some things you could suggest to people that are kind of in that fight, flight, still mode, and they're kind of really starting to, wanting to fix things?
Breath work is incredibly important. It seems so simple that you almost convince yourself it doesn't work, but the awareness of your breath, like just focusing on that, is sometimes enough to pull you out of it. I just did it on my aunt's daughter when we went to something as simple as we went to a haunted house, and she was like, anxiety was through the roof, and I said I got her to do the breathing exercises with me, and she's like, "Wow, that really works." I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, I know, it really works. It just dropping into your body and feeling that, and also becoming aware. Like, you have to start looking at your relationships and the people around you with a different lens, and that's really hard. Like, I realized halfway through my journey that every woman I had surrounded myself with was a version of my mother, including people I had hired, friends. I mean, I was going, holy crap, I'm surrounded by her. Like, she is everywhere. And that awareness is one of the first steps of it. And also, when you have panic attacks, because everybody who grew up in that kind of home, honestly, I believe everyone who grew up in that kind of home has PTSD. But that's a whole
absolutely.
conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I speak I mean, PTSD, it needs to be recognized as a real thing. And that could be another conversation for another day. But you have to start realizing that just because you're feeling something doesn't mean it's real. You know what I mean? Like, you get that feeling of the fight or flight. You have to drop back in your body. I mean, I would have attacks, like I'd be in the red zone like that, and I'd have to talk myself. And now it doesn't happen hardly at all. Like, I recognize the trigger and eliminate it before I even go into the red zone. But I was reliving things, if you would have reached past my face at one point in time, I would have dodged out of the way. Mm-hmm. And just because you were near me, you know what I mean? And so it's becoming aware of those things. And it's hard for a lot of people, because then you start realizing, like, how much you've endured, and but that is the self-awareness is the first thing. And then building your self-worth, because like you were a workaholic, you said that's because you had to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. To who? But you did. You mm-hmm. felt it. You had to prove yourself. You felt you had to prove yourself on some level, and for people to love you, to be lovable, and that the self-worth is the secret sauce, in my opinion.
I read where you put that, and I like that, because that's so true.
It is.
I mean, you literally, and that's why I focus a lot on children too, because you can build that up. I mean, you can work, it takes a long time. So the earlier you start, the better.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Rather than starting at, 25, 26. I mean, I have people that come and talk to me that are starting at 50 and 60 that are just felt bad about themselves and unworthy. They're in for 60 years.
I know.
Mm-hmm. And it's awareness, I think, is the number one. Everything stems around awareness, and it's mm-hmm. awareness of how you're thinking, your emotions, but it's also where you're feeling it in your body.
Yes, that's a big one. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'll say sometimes, like, well, when I stress, it's like, I can tell exactly what stress and why, because like sometimes it's in my back, sometimes it's in my gut, sometimes, mm-hmm. It's different. And when you're talking about breath work, it's breathing through that area, breathing mm-hmm. it right into your gut, that good energy. And
yes,
I mean, energy is huge.
And letting it pass and allowing yourself to feel, because I mean, I'm sure you have a similar story. I wasn't allowed to have any emotions.
Oh, no.
As a kid. Like they didn't matter. On a good day, I was told, I'll give you something to cry about if you keep crying. And that was a good day. You know what I mean? So emotions were not allowed, and to allow yourself to feel them, and I think as a society kind of demonize feeling anger and feeling rage and stuff. And you're going to feel that towards your parents. You're going to feel that towards your lost childhood, which is really what you're angry about.
Yeah.
You didn't get to be a kid. You didn't get to be a teenager. You were busy taking care of them, and that you're allowed to feel angry about that, go to a rage room and break some stuff. Like, you're allowed to feel that. But you can't live in it, but
we are definitely a society that does not allow that right from the beginning. And I'm guilty mm-hmm. of it. When your kids are crying in your public, you're like, stop it. You're okay. You're fine. And, and then you catch yourself and you go, no, they're not okay. They're not fine. It's okay for them to yell out or scream or cry. And we're conditioned to do it.
Yeah. I
you
still
know?
apologize if I start to cry. If I hear something that upsets me and I'll start crying, I'll apologize. It's like instinct. It is. Yeah, it
And
is.
it's, yeah, and it wasn't even just the bad emotions. Like if you were too happy, it's what are you so happy about? Stop it. What do you mean
Mhm.
stop it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember the first time you actually felt like, oh my God, it's okay to feel? Because I remember I went to a therapist and that was their very first question. And what does that make you feel? And I was like, nothing. I don't
Yeah.
like, what does that even mean? Like, really?
I
You
was
know?
asked, how often do you laugh? And I had to sit and think about it. I was like, I don't think ever. I thought things were funny, but I didn't laugh. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't a thing I expressed because you get yelled at or, ridiculed or yeah. Like you said, why are you so happy? What are you, why are you laughing? You sound stupid. Why are you laughing so loud? That wasn't a funny joke or whatever. Yeah. You're just not allowed to. So I had to I don't know if you did, but I had to teach myself to laugh.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Like
absolutely.
allow it. Like, hey, you think that's funny? Normal people laugh. Like you have to go.
Um, I'm actually in this new group of people and it's called the Serenity Circle. You should check it out. It's all healers. It's really cute. But they were talking about bringing in laugh yoga.
Yeah,
And
because
it's
that's how. Yeah.
mhm. It's like, because your brain is a miraculous thing, especially for saving you. Honestly, I feel like if brains weren't constructed the way they were, people would not survive the things they survive. You
True.
take in how many millions of little bites of information and you weed out how many other millions and just, but to me, the things like you can't laugh. Your brain doesn't know if a laugh is fake or real. So when you laugh, whether it's forced or it's real, by default, it's going to put you in a better mood. You're going to raise all those things that you raise when you're honestly laughing. I never really looked to see if the same is about sadness, because I don't really want to know, honestly.
Well, I know fear and excitement are the exact same areas of the brain. So you can actually reframe how you look at fear is I'm excited as opposed to I'm afraid. Yeah, that I know, but I don't think sadness works that way, to be honest with you. No.
I don't think so either. And which is good. There you go. There's the brain again, trying to help you
Yeah.
out. But no, I was going to bring that up when you were talking about the anxiety attacks, because it is, if you can just start to feel that and you just think, okay, this is the same feeling I feel when I'm on a roller coaster. This is the same thing I feel when I'm, doing something fun and exciting. You have to reframe it and then you can get yourself out of that. That's a huge, huge help.
Yes. It tremendously. Yeah. And you were talking about, your brain protecting you. How I can't tell you how many people I've tried to convince and hopefully did convince that you have to stop looking at it self-sabotage because your brain's protecting you. Right. You're not trying to sabotage. Like I've had many people, professionally and, friends and relatives and stuff go, I feel like I'm always sabotaging my life. You're not. Your brain really thinks it's protecting you. You're not trying to screw up everything. It's its coping mechanism. It's going, wait a minute, that's unfamiliar. Unfamiliar equals not good usually in our head, and especially coming from the homes we came from. So it's not self-sabotage. And I think if we reframe that, it's I think paramount to the healing journey, because you don't look at yourself, because that just perpetuates the unworthiness and the lack of self-love and all that stuff when you think you're constantly screwing your life up, as opposed to, no, my brain is protecting me and I have to let it know I'm safe, I'm okay.
Right, exactly. And that's why I think the inner child work and everything is so good, because you're going all the way down, you're going all the way back, peeling back all those layers and getting to the root of why you feel the way you are. And to me, it's like I was saying about positive affirmations. They're absolutely amazing.
They are.
But they work only as much as they can, because when something happens and it comes at you unexpectedly, you snap right back into that subconscious thinking and acting and reacting of the subconscious, which is the beat down part. So it's like, you got to get back to, you have to truly, truly believe that you are worthy. And that's where I think the work needs to come in, so
absolutely
much.
Oh, sure. Like you said, affirmations, or something as simple as, I could teach you how to set boundaries, but if you don't think you're worthy of setting them, then you're not going to do it. That's why that's the first, is you have to feel worthy, because I honestly think the rest of it falls into place as you start to feel worthy. Like you start to go, hey, wait a minute, you're treating me a certain way. That's not okay with me. You're talking to me a certain way. That's not okay with me. You know, the hair stands up on the back of my neck when I'm around you. That's not okay. But because you feel worthy to say that and to feel that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's where it really begins.
So what would be a word of advice to people listening that are not at that point? Now, I can tell, before I even ask that question, that is, I'll just kind of put a caveat in here. That is why I think like what you're doing and everything with the coaching and what I do with the coaching is so important, because it's just an accountability partner. It's someone that's going to help you set those boundaries and keep reinforcing the fact that, you know, even though I say, I love me, I love me, I love me, you need someone else to say, yes, you're lovable. Yes, you should love you, and really keep breathing that into you. I think it's important. That's why groups are so important. And that's why, you know, that's why programs that are group programs work, because it's a camaraderie. It's a bunch of people building you up, because until you feel worthy, you can't, it's very hard to take the action to do things of a worthy feeling person, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And it's very accurate. Yeah, that is 100% accurate. There's two things I would say to someone that's not there yet. Believe it or not, you will give yourself the unconditional love when you're ready. And it's all inside. You don't need anybody else. You really don't. You will find people like you and me helpful along the way. Absolutely. But ultimately, all of it is inside. All of that love and acceptance and all the wonderful things that you missed out on as a child, they're inside of you. If you just let them come out, it's in there. And the healing is not, there's not an end point. And I think a lot of people, I find that people fall into two categories that are afraid to start the process. Is one, they're so afraid to let go of their pain because their pain has become such a part of their identity. And two is that they think that once they're on the healing process, like there's an end goal and then it's poof, all gone. And you actually not only can, but you have to hold both. You know, you can hold your pain and not live in your pain, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But it's still always a part of you. It framed who you are. You wouldn't be Tammy if you didn't go through what you went through.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely. And you just, you know, the biggest thing is, like you said, is the self-worth and the just knowing that it's inside of you. I mean, that's my biggest message to people as well. I mean, you voiced it exactly like you know, it's that you have it all. And part of the problem is, you know, it's the external world that changed what you think about the world. So why are we keep looking to the external world to fix it, you know?
And change what you think about yourself.
Right.
The external world. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not going to. You have to be able to reach deep in and believe in yourself.
Have you ever done mirror work or do any with your, it feels so silly at the beginning, but it actually works. I mean, you feel ridiculous. You're like in front of the mirror going, this is stupid. Mm-hmm. And then you start going, hey, you're great, you know, and it starts feeling natural. But yeah, you feel, I think a lot of people are resistant to it because it feels silly at the beginning, but it's such a good tool. It really is.
It's like the first time you do inner child work and they tell you to put a picture of yourself as a baby on them and every day talk to it and apologize and make happy with it and write letters to it. And you're just like, what am I doing? But then after a while, you're just like, you know, writing like crazy and playing with it. And, you know, and still that's your inner voice. I mean, that's your inner child, but you're still, you know, come on, Tammy, like you're literally 55 years old and you're like, stop it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, your subconscious, we don't have a conscious brain until we're 7. So all of that, think about how much you've endured, you know, especially growing up in the homes we grew up in before 7. Mm-hmm. And those formed all of your subconscious thoughts. Yep. And now you plop that into an adult body and you go, here, go live your life. And you're like, oh, okay. I'm dealing with a 7-year-old who got completely beaten down in my head and fantastic. And I'm supposed to be making decisions on that. Yeah.
Yep. And it is, but I mean, the big message is that there's hope for everybody. Yes. Absolutely a hope for everybody.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
So tell us more about how, I'm going to put everything in the show notes, but what is the easiest, quickest way to reach out to you, or what do you have to offer?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I was repointing my website because I didn't like the service I was with. So I'm finishing that, but I also have a website. The easiest way to get in touch with me right now, I would say, would probably be DM me on Instagram. I offer one-on-one coaching, and I'm looking to start a group program by the end of the year. So yeah, that is what because I do believe that there is camaraderie in the group program, but I do one-on-one primarily.
Okay.
So right now, yes.
And your final words of wisdom for all of our listeners.
Oh, ooh, unprepared. Ooh.
On the spot. Here we go.
All right. It's worth it.
You know,
and you're worth it. Yeah.
That's great.
It's worth it. It sucks. The healing journey sucks. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is so worth it. And you're so worth it. And the person on the other side is who you're supposed to be.
Very well said. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll probably have you back later, because I know you and I talked for 2 hours the other night, and we had
we
could talk about.
Yes. Yeah, so, we didn't even tap into forgiveness. We didn't tap into CPSD. Oh, we got all kinds of stuff.
No, we did not. We did not. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
You're very welcome. And for everybody out there listening, again, here is one more situation where she turned her trials into triumph and her sadness into smiles, and we love to see it. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Bye.